Chapter 9. Collapse. Bernstein began changing social democracy by giving up the idea that capitalism would collapse. That idea is the very foundation of scientific socialism. By rejecting it, Bernstein also rejects all of socialism. As he speaks, he lets go of one socialist idea after another so that he can keep his first belief. Without capitalism falling apart, it is impossible to take away the wealth of the capitalist class. So, Bernstein gives up on taking their wealth and instead chooses a gradual move toward the cooperative principle as the goal of the labor movement. But cooperation cannot happen without capitalist production. Because of this, Bernstein also gives up on making production social and only suggests reforming commerce and building consumers' cooperatives. However, changing society through consumers' cooperatives, even with trade unions, is not in line with the real, material growth of capitalist society. For that reason, Bernstein abandons the idea of history based on material conditions. Moreover, his view of how economic development moves forward does not match the Marxist idea of surplus value. Therefore, Bernstein also gives up on the theory of value and surplus value, and in doing so, he rejects the whole economic system of Karl Marx. But the workers' struggle cannot continue without a clear final goal and a solid economic base in the current society. So, Bernstein abandons the idea of class struggle and talks about making peace with bourgeois liberalism. In a society with classes, class struggle happens naturally and cannot be avoided. Therefore, Bernstein even questions whether classes really exist. For him, the working class is just a group of individuals who are different politically, mentally, and economically. He also says that the bourgeoisie does not come together politically because of their own economic interests, but only because of pressure from outside. If there is no economic foundation for class struggle and, as a result, there are no real classes in our society, then both the future and even the past fights of the workers against the rich seem impossible. Social democracy and its successes become completely hard to understand, or they can only be explained as the result of government pressure, that is, not as the natural result of history, but as the lucky outcomes of the Hohenzollern policy. Not as the legitimate offspring of capitalist society, but as the bastard children of reaction. In this very strict logical way, Bernstein moves from the idea of history based on material conditions to the view of newspapers like the Frankfurter Zeitung and the Vossische Zeitung. After Bernstein stopped using socialist criticism of capitalism, he found that the way things were going was, in general, acceptable. He did not hesitate in his view. He noticed that, at that time, there was not much political reaction in Germany, and that in Western Europe we cannot really call it political reaction. In all the Western countries, the rich classes only defend themselves against the socialist movement rather than oppress it. Instead of getting worse, the workers' situation was improving. In fact, the rich were moving forward in politics and acted in a reasonable way. Everything seemed to be as good as it could be in the best of all possible worlds. Bernstein then went step by step from beginning to end. He started by giving up the final goal of socialism while saying he would keep the movement. But because there can be no true socialist movement without a socialist goal, he ended up giving up the movement altogether. In this way, Bernstein's idea of socialism fell apart completely. The neat and balanced structure of socialist thought turned into a pile of scraps in his view, where bits from all systems and ideas from many thinkers, big and small, ended up together. He took a little from Marx and Proudhon, from Leon von Buch and Franz Oppenheimer, from Friedrich Albert Lang and Kant, from Herr Prokopowicz and R. Ritter von Neupauer, from Herkner and Schulz-Gavernitz, from Lassalle and Professor Julius Wolff. There was nothing surprising about that. When he abandoned scientific socialism, he lost the clear center that held all the separate facts together in a complete picture of the world. At first, his teaching, made up of pieces from many systems, looked completely free from bias. Bernstein did not like talking about party science or class science, and he did not like talking about class liberalism or class morality. He believed he was expressing a kind of human, general, abstract science, abstract liberalism, and abstract morality. But because real society is made of different classes with completely opposite interests, hopes, and ideas, This idea of a general human science about society, or abstract liberalism or morality, is just a dream, pure utopia. In reality, the science, democracy, and morality that Bernstein called general and human are only the dominant science, dominant democracy, and dominant morality. That is, the rich people's science, democracy, and morality. When Bernstein gives up Marx's economic ideas and follows thinkers like Bretonneau, Bombach, Jevons, Say, and Julius Wolff instead, he swaps the solid, scientific reasons for freeing workers for ideas that support the rich. When he talks about liberalism as if it were for everyone and changes socialism into a kind of liberalism, he takes away socialism's working-class focus and its true meaning. At the same time, he paints the rich, the group that stands for liberalism in history, as the heroes of all people. When he fights against the idea of making money and things the most powerful forces in development, when he argues against what he calls a disdain for ideals that should guide social democracy, and when he claims to speak for high ideals and morals while also opposing the real source of workers' moral renewal, the fight between classes, he is really doing this. He is telling the working class to adopt the rich people's way of being, to make peace with the way society is now, and to let go of their real hopes for change, leaving them with only empty ethical ideas. When he launches strong attacks against our way of thinking, the system that helps workers understand and fight their oppression, he is really trying to break the mental tool that has helped the working class see that their hardships will not last forever and that they will eventually win. By saying goodbye to our dialectical system and instead using a back-and-forth style of thought, saying things like, on the one hand, on the other hand, and yes, but he slips into the kind of thinking typical of rich people who are losing their power. This way of thinking is a clear sign that he sees the world the way the bourgeois do. In Bernstein's writing, the word bourgeois is not just a label for one class, it becomes a general idea for society as a whole. In the end, he has swapped the language of the working class for the language of the rich in his science, politics, morals, and way of thinking. When he uses the word citizen for both the rich and the workers, as if they were the same, he is saying that all people and all of society are like the rich.